Okay, check this shit out. It's January in San Diego. It's been gorgeous days here. Daytime highs in the 60s. And we've been having these king tides. My buddy and I like to go down to the ocean on a king tide, low tide day and just hunt around for whatever the tide has left. We just went there in October and we found a bunch of abalone shells, and we went back yesterday and it was wide open, abalone shells everywhere. I want to note, you cannot take abalone animals in the state of California right now, but you are allowed to pick up shells. So this is a red shell. This is from Northern California. This was a commercially harvested shell from years and years ago when it was still legal. So it's a gorgeous specimen inside and out. We're looking for shells down on the beach, and they're usually pretty beat up, but we bring them home and we clean them up and hope for we get some show quality pieces like this. So let me show you what we saw yesterday, and then we'll look at some of the shells I found. We were a little iffy about going down to the beach. This king tide, sometimes we're having 10 to 20 foot swells, huge waves, kind of trashes the beach, moves the sand around. Not the best time to be shell hunting. But we were pleasantly surprised we got down there and the surf was really mild, really beautiful day. These rocks you can see are normally underwater when we're hunting shells. So it was awesome to explore some new territory. There's my buddy Chris out there. He walks fast. He finds a lot of stuff. He's a good guy to hang out with. It was a good day on the beach. I saw this shell and I thought it was empty because it had the tip cut off there. Normally that's a conical shaped shell. But then I saw it has a foot, so it's alive. And the cool thing I've never noticed before is that the foot has its own shell on it. That's not common, but some animals do it. Really beautiful little piece of shell there. I saw this shell when I was looking at the top snail above, and it's a green abalone. Really nice inside, really nice outside. I think it's probably getting polished a little bit by the sand and the beach, but it has a hole in it. We kind of only take pieces if they look really nice. We have a lot of shells. So we left it there. Someone else can find it. If I was a little kid and that was my first shell, I would be super stoked. So we left it there for them. Hopefully somebody else picked it up. While I was looking at that shell, Chris called me over and he saw this live abalone. So this is green. The shell is pretty trashed. It's getting basically sandblasted all the time. It almost looks like it would be dead based on how beat up the shell is. But you can see up here on top, those are the tendrils. That is how the animal kind of navigates. It smells for seaweed or mates or predators perhaps, I'm not sure. But when you can see those tendrils, you know that the animal is alive. We looked around and there weren't any others around, so that one's gonna have a hard time breeding. They're broadcast spawners. They need to have partners nearby. I hope that guy can find someone to mate with because there's not a lot of abalone out there. This is a keyhole limpet. The shell is on top and it has an oblong hole in the top, which is why they call it a keyhole. The black is actual animal tissue that grows up around the shell. That's not something that happens a lot with sea life like that, where the shell is embedded in the flesh. It's got an orange foot. That's not really hurting it too much. I just put him back where I found him. We don't see these very often, but it's always exciting. That's a brittle star. He was kind of dry docked on the eelgrass there, but he was kind of moving a little bit. I think he was alive. I put him back in the water. Here's another solo green abalone. This one is really neat because you can see really well the margin of the animal. So that's along the bottom of the shell. You can see the black with the yellow dots. That is, it kind of sucks itself up into its shell, kind of like a snail. Found this shell, and it's not a great specimen, but I did put it in my pack. But right underneath it was a ledge with 6 live abalone in it, and that's really neat. Our friend, the marine biologist who runs Get Inspired, a nonprofit that is working to restore abalone, has told us that you need to have 6 abalone in a square meter in order for them to breed. Again, they kind of broadcast their gametes out, and those gametes mix in the water and they float around for a few days, and then they go through a little metamorphosis and they sink out, and the animal starts to turn into much more of a snail with a shell. And so hopefully when you have a little breeding colony like this, they're making babies. Those babies are going up into the water column. Hopefully they'll settle down and we'll have abalone along more of the coast. Here's 2 more we found. 2 is theoretically enough to breed. 6 is better. You don't know if these are both males. Beautiful specimens. There's an owl limpet. That is a pretty typical scene that you'll see down at the beach. A big owl limpet, a bunch of small owl limpets, some mussels, some gooseneck barnacles. Just a quick intro to abalone in California. We actually have 7 species of abalone native to this state. My goal in life has been to collect shells from all 7. As you can see here, I have 6. I want to just show you real quick what we have. So the most common down here is the green abalone. They're all kind of the same pattern on the inside. This is called nacre, because the animal extrudes microscopic crystals of some kind of calcium carbonate. It's just kind of always extruding them onto the interior of this shell, along with a protein, which is a glue. So this shell is literally thousands and thousands of layers thick of these crystals. As they sit in the water, they get kind of covered with crustaceans and sandworms and things like that. They start to actually look like a rock. It's kind of camouflage. This one is called a pink. It's got this really ripple pattern, and it also has a nice, beautiful inside. These ones, much more so, you'll see the rings from, this is from their diet. The animal actually starts off, if you can see that, that was like the baby animal. And as it keeps extruding those crystals, it starts to build a bigger and bigger shell in a spiral. And so this is like a year of growth. And the color of that ring is based on what it was eating that year. This is one of the most common abalone you can find in the state. This is a red. This is what people have been diving for the last 20 years since they closed greens in San Diego. People in NorCal have been diving for these reds. These are gorgeous. Again, you can see the growth rings, beautiful inside and out. This one, I think you can see that. It has a red margin, so that's part of why they call it a red abalone, and obviously the shell is very red. The most popular one to eat was called a white. They're almost gone. There was a survey, I don't know, 10 years ago, and they found 3 wild white abalone out there. They are trying to raise them in captivity. The way you can tell the white is that this margin is white compared to the other one was red, if you recall. This is a black abalone. These used to be very common here in San Diego and all of Southern California in like 2 feet of water. These ones had a wasting disease, and so there really aren't that many left. I guess there's a bunch on some of the islands. You can see the outer shell is kind of chipped away, so you're getting kind of that mother of pearl on the outside too. The specimen here is called a threaded abalone. I actually think that this specimen is not from California, but probably from down in Mexico or Central America, but it has much more of a domed shell. The threaded almost has threaded lines this way. And then the 7th that I've never found a sample of is the pinto abalone. Those were really flat and they were kind of white and mottled brown colors. So here's what we found yesterday. This was the first one we found. It's a huge pink. So there's kind of pearl nacre here and there's darker nacre here. This is all really dense, so it has some potential. You know, sometimes this is the oldest part of the shell, so it's usually the most rotten. But I'm really excited to see how this one looks when it's finished. The inside, not so great, but one of these days I'm gonna learn how to polish the inside too. I also found this one yesterday. There's another pink. This one you can see, I'm gonna dip it in water here. When it's wet, it kind of brings out the color. This one is definitely gonna have some cool colors, and the shell is nice and dense. It's got these like tube worms that grow on it. So the thing I'll do with this is let it dry in the sun, and then I'll come with the wire brush and get all this crap off. And then we'll do muriatic acid. This is one I found in October, so I'm partial cleaned on it. I did the kind of a coarse brush and I did a first pass with the muriatic acid. So you can see this is a pink abalone. This one really shows the pink color, and it even has kind of a nicer inside. So this is a really cool specimen. I just found it on the beach, right? And just a reminder, this is what they look like. A good specimen when finished. So this is one of my prized possessions here. So yesterday we also found some greens. This one is pretty beat up. It gets really pitted. This will probably be a yard specimen. I like to have these just in my yard. And I don't know, maybe one day I'll make like a walkway with shells, but I'll probably just leave this one natural. It's not worth like working on. But I also found these 2 guys, a small and a medium. This one is in really good shape and it's almost clean, and the inside is gorgeous. So the younger ones, they tend to have less of a scar. They tend to have better looking inside. And I found this guy, the really young ones are kind of pearlescent. And again, not a lot of cleanup on this. So these 2 are kind of exciting finds. I might just do a muriatic acid on this so you can see it, but here's one I found in October. I did already some brushing and some muriatic. So this again is a green. There's not a lot of green on it. It's really kind of a red color, but once you learn the morphology of these, you can tell the difference between a green and a red. This has these striations. The red kind of has more of a ripple. And reminder, this is what it looks like when fully finished. So even this one is still pretty red, but it has some green up here. Really beautiful inside. Again, this was one of the first ones I ever found. One of my favorite pieces just because it sparked my love of these animals and these shells. So again, there's finished, partial finished, and then raw. Let's do a little muriatic acid so you can see how that goes. Okay, disclaimer here, guys. If you're not comfortable working with acid, don't do this. This is definitely not 100% safe. So I've got pool acid here and I've got my hose. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put a little bit of, and I'm also wearing boots and goggles here. I'm just gonna put a little bit of acid on the outside. I'm gonna try not to get it into the holes, and I'm gonna rinse it. And it actually works better if your shells are wet to start. So wet those down. I'm gonna run a lot of water, so I don't want this acid just sitting around. That's after one wash. Already has the color coming out. You can kind of see how quickly this works. And what I want to do is wash it like that, and then I'll let it dry in the sun. And that protein layer I was mentioning earlier kind of comes to the surface when you do this acid, and it will kind of dry up and flake off, and then you brush it, and acid, and you'll brush, and it's kind of a judgment call. It's art, right? You do this until you get it looking nice the way you like it. So here's the final results for everything. These two greens we found this week are really pretty. I'm gonna call these done. Look at that nice, beautiful mirror finish. These have the kind of typical, it is kind of reddish, but with the green on top, really pretty. And here's that one I found in October. This one is basically done. So these are all, I think all three of these are done. I'm gonna go to varnish on them. And then these pinks, this one's cleaning up really nice. Still have some work to do, but some nice red, pink, and white colors in it. I acid washed the inside, which helped a little. This other one I found this week. Some nice colors starting to develop here. This one needs a lot of work. I also acid washed that inside. And then here again, this one from October. It's got some really nice colors. Inside is gorgeous. It's great specimens. Well, that's certainly more than most people want to know about abalones or abalone shells. Thanks for your patience. If you're still here with me, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.